So it is the Tech Growth and Data Science staff meeting. I had to change the meeting title here for September 28th, and I hope the recording works this time. Last couple Zoom has failed me, or I've failed Zoom perhaps. So having said, looks like Mon's not here, but can somebody read Mon's announcement, verbalize hers?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, Dylan Bernardi. Dylan joined GitLab as part of the internship program. He's based out of California, has a degree in applied math and comp sci. His background is in Python as well as Go, and we are super excited to have him on our team. Dylan, welcome aboard.
Yeah, that's great. It's really exciting. I'll certainly be interested to see how that goes. It's our first intern in 2 years across engineering at GitLab. So I will be reaching out to both Mon and Dylan to see how onboarding is going and seeing if there are ways that we can help.
Good stuff. So some celebrations, personal work. So nice work by Mark Art and the vulnerability research team on this project and associated blog, the benchmarking framework for SAST, part of the Google Summer of Code project for 2022, which helped create a benchmarking framework for SAST. So neat stuff there, and there's a GitLab blog about it that Mark's team wrote. And also, more kudos for somebody who couldn't make it today, which is fine. Nice job, Mon and team, on the upcoming launch of Suggested Reviewer. It's been a long time coming, and it's already in the what's new section of the product, and good stuff there. You're breaking some new ground for GitLab in terms of being able to run ML workloads on GitLab and then make use of them. And someone verbalize news and events A, other than me.
Yeah, I can take that one. So from Christopher, September the 7th and 8th, development leadership conducted an offsite. The reason for the offsite was to evaluate how we're doing as a large and growing organization. For those interested, you can review and read the readout here. It includes additional context, summary note, goals, agenda, readout notes, and a few pictures, which you may even see Thomas in.
Not only will you see Thomas, since he was able to go in person, Phil and I attended remotely. Thomas, you got to tell us about Flat Christopher.
Yeah, but we weren't inclusive because we didn't have Flat Wayne or Flat Phil or Flat Cheryl or so everybody else. So Christopher was scheduled to go, but he couldn't go, but he could not attend at the last minute. And so a certain person who shall not be, well, I think she's claiming credit for it. Juliana did this, got in touch with, was able to acquire through clandestine means a high-res image of Christopher that they turned into a very large flat version of himself so that he could attend in person, so to speak. Sadly, he was late. He only showed up for the last session on the last day, but he did make it in time, which was fantastic. And yes, there were copious photos that were taken with him everywhere as he went on tours. He went out to dinner. He attended meetings. He did the closing sessions. It was quite interesting. There were various ideas about how Flat Christopher could attend Zoom meetings going forward. We'll see if that actually happens. Yeah.
There's some read-only items, which is great. So I've got one of the odd issues items. So since I've started to move content that was previously put in Slack over the week into this meeting, a large percentage of the topics are for me. That's not what I intended. To have this meeting mostly be things that I bring up. So I want to remind everyone, please feel free to add your own agenda items, and mine can be made read-only and or pushed to future meetings as needed to make space for topics from others.
And Wayne, thank you for doing this. I think we've seen this trend elsewhere too. Like we can review documents where we can go and look for all this stuff together in one place. So I think it's really effective. You just elaborate or exemplified it. We do bounce around. Okay, that's read only. Oh, here's our next verbalized topic. I'm wondering if we want to have 2 sections, explicit read only FYIs, and then topics that might warrant a broader discussion. Because I think that's what I enjoy about this meeting is the time with you all to talk about things, even if they're just updates. But we want to elaborate and ask more provocative questions.
Then maybe add a read only section and just put the read only things in it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can kind of
Well,
promote
can
that.
I make offer a suggestion? Well, actually ask a question. Why have a read only section? Who determines whether something is read only?
So let me back up a few months. As of February, it's been longer than a few months, I guess. But we had heavy, you can probably scroll through the agenda or look at the historical one, but we had a ton of read only. And it begged the question, why aren't we talking about some of this? Like, because I think it was beneficial to elaborate. So we've kind of taken different forms of this meeting. And now that we're putting, Wayne specifically is putting more of the cross post type content in this document, a lot of that possibly doesn't warrant a discussion, I think is what we're identifying. I share the question though. It would be curious, and if we have time in this meeting, if we're ending early, why don't we circle back and talk about some of this as a team?
Right. I have a practical reason why we want to read only section, but we'll come back to that.
You have all the answers, Thomas. We want to
No,
hear 'em.
I do not have all the answers, and that
You
is
have a answer.
need a
Go
read
for it.
only section. So
Is your answer read only?
not yet, but it might be. No, but anyway, we'll come back because I know there's more. There's at least one more read only. Sorry, I'll let the joke die.
Let's iterate on it, figure out what works. As I say that is, I think it's the author decides if it's read only and the consumers decide if it's read only. So if the consumers decide they want to talk about it, then they bring it up. Maybe something like that. On that note, there's some read-only items, and we can revisit any of them, right, that anybody wants to discuss. But I'm going to skip over those now, but we can revisit. So in B, so I learned that outside development, they're using a vendor I hadn't heard about before for coaching. Check it out if you or your team members, if you think you or your team members might be interested. Kind of synced up some of the networking I do with folks outside engineering. This came up. Also, the monthly PI or performance indicator review or cross-functional PI review happened earlier today for SEC and data science, covering both engineering and product management metrics. So the details, I linked them here. This was just earlier today. And a reminder on the engineering director shadow program. Please promote it with those who are interested. There's a link to the page here. It's a learning experience. It's gotten great feedback from the approximately 10 shadows from various departments. Marketing, pro services, development, and customer success have done it already. Open to any current team member in any department. I resend this every 3 months to get interest. That is everything we had in the agenda. Do we want to revisit any or visit any read-only items?
Yeah.
Really?
Is Thomas ready to elaborate? If not,
Yeah,
let
and
me
I have
know
more
what
that I
you're
haven't had a
about.
yes, and I haven't had a chance to write everything down yet. In weekly meetings that I've chaired for years, I've become increasingly heavy on making sure that the reason for read-only sections is cascading information sharing. Specifically, like from engineering, what is the channel formerly known as Engineering Week in Review, now Engineering FYI, or if they're from development staff meeting or engineering staff meeting, or if they're from Slack, what's happening in GitLab or company FYI, things that need to be highlighted to make sure that people are aware of and signal boost. I will cherry pick and signal boost strategic items or selected items from a lot of different sources to make sure that everybody has seen them. And I used to speak to them. I have gotten feedback in the past that speaking to all of them sent the signal to everyone that this was an information dissemination meeting only, and it was squashing collaboration on the agenda. So what I'm doing now is a practice that I've been using for a number of months, which was to have an announcement section that was read only with specific instructions. If you want to talk to any of these, add an agenda item about an announcement. That way people can highlight what they want to talk about further without us taking time on in the meeting itself to discuss it, unless there's interest. So
Yeah, sounds like a great compromise. Yeah. Good idea.
So it satisfies the cascade, but it also allows folks to choose what they want to talk more about. So that's the way that I approach it. Mm-hmm. And I'll provide an example from yesterday in just a moment. Let me put a bookmark in. You'll see what we do.
Neil, I think you asked any themes so far in the Sec Retro conversation so far?
Yeah, I mean, retros are a prevalent topic. I apologize missing it's still a little early for me, the Amber session. But yeah, I know, and I won't be at the later one because I have a conflict, plus it's late. I don't know, it might be too preemptive and we don't have to disclose anything. But within this group, Thomas, did you pick up on anything that's notable we might want to do?
Yes, and it's directly applicable to cross-functional prioritization. In that there is not a crisp understanding on what is maintenance versus what is feature work. And there are differing answers as to what label engineers will put on MRs that is not consistent across the section, which was a fascinating thing. Because one of the things we were looking at was MR types and the fact that we're spending like MR in 15.4, roughly half of all MRs were maintenance. And it was outpacing feature work, even though teams were putting in more feature heavy issues that they were prioritizing. So what was going on with that? And so a request that came from senior and staff engineers that were there this morning, or my morning, apologies, was, can we document in the handbook a more crisp understanding of what is maintenance versus what is features? An example that came from one person from static analysis is like the dependency bumps where we're getting new rules. Is that maintenance or is that features because it's also giving us more capability? And so that was one of the things that came out of those conversations, and it came out of talking through metrics and KPIs. There were a couple others, but I need to go look back at the handbook. That was the one that got a lot of back and forth. That was notable.
So that one feels like a feature. It's an upgrade, right? It's more scanning capability.
It's more,
right? Yeah. I mean, sure, sometimes it's just like version upgrades for security gaps or whatever, but what you're talking to is like actual new features.
it can be. I mean, but assuming that there are updated rules, but it can be fixing bugs within the engine itself.
And do we know that when we do the upgrade?
When you
like,
do,
are we caring about that so much? I guess we probably put that into our feature set, right? At some point.
it's what's being. Go ahead.
I was going to say, with like, there's a change log that gets generated per analyzer, and in there it'll tell you, was it bumped by version, and then, or was it like a significant bump, etc. We usually do a release post for each, excuse me, each milestone around all the analyzer updates and call out anything major, if there is anything major feature related. But if it's just minor maintenance, we'll keep a short tagline on it, but we are calling out the key updates within the analyzers in a release post.
And Amar, do we extend our, I guess, do we regard that as different in the workflow, or is it upgrade and upgrade? And it's a leading question because I'm wondering about like test coverage. If we know that this analyzer now does this, or if we're adding tests for it, then that feels very development and feature heavy on our end versus like just upgrading a version and calling it a day.
I think that part is dependent. Like if there is something significant that we did notice that we need to add more coverage for, I think it turns into a discussion. Within that issue itself, I haven't, at least in my experience so far, seen any additional work done in the specific issue outside of just the version updates, but I could be wrong there. We'll probably have to look into that. Unless Thomas, you had anything else you wanted to add.
A historical example from version updates would be for PMD. I'm sorry, no, Wayne, I saw you wanting to. Okay, never mind. Example would be PMD, which gives us coverage over Salesforce's Apex language. One of the practices that they have for the is providing links with additional information about whatever was found. But the links include the version of the PMD scanner itself. And so when you update the scanner, the links in the generated reports would change, which would generate a needed additional MRs into the test projects. Even though it didn't necessarily provide additional capabilities, it was still test maintenance. So that's an example of I lost the question because I was trying to find some other things. But there's examples at times where we will get additional capabilities. And there are times where within the same issue or the same operation, it's just going to be correcting bugs or cleaning up tech debt within the underlying project itself. And sometimes those result in additional maintenance tasks, or we might get more capabilities, but we need to maintain the tests. And so there's just enough ambiguity that there was an ask for a little more clarity.
Follow-up question, Amar and Thomas, you mentioned the changelog that comes along with the analyzer updates.
Mhm.
Do we promote those forward? Would our release notes ever include information like that? You can now expose this new type of vulnerability because our third-party analyzer does it. Absolutely right, yeah. So yeah, it's a pass-through, but I think we still deserve credit.
So in that case, would you consider this more feature work rather than maintenance, since we are promoting it anyway?
That's where the level of effort I think comes into play. Like if we're not doing anything different, then it'd be harder to sell. But if we're adding test coverage, if we're promoting it as a new feature, then classifying it as such seems really fair.
But once again, yeah, noted. But this is where the discussion comes in because the practice is not consistent throughout the section.
Exactly. No, it's very discretionary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's up to the engineer to catch that. They go and do the upgrade, what the scope is.
Yep.
Which isn't really fair because we should have that categorized before the work starts.
I linked.
I think we should be flexible. What's that?
I was just gonna say I linked the release post, the MR, if anyone's interested in looking. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory there.
I think the underlying intention between this three-way makeup is that we're continuing to contribute to in a fair ratio across different categories, right? I mean that the company is entirely cognizant about what we're delivering and that we're not overwhelming or overloading ourselves in one specific category, that we're monitoring that information. So I don't know, Wayne, you've been super quiet, but I've seen you nod your head. But does this still achieve that goal, the underlying cross-functional goal? Is that as a company, we feel comfortable with the ratio of work?
I don't know. I have to think about it more. It's a good question, though.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear the retro is exposing something like this, especially like on the toes of on the heels, I guess, of the working group in the new process. Wayne, do we have, this came up earlier in a conversation. Are we still doing the monthly things? I guess that was kind of a hard demand a couple months ago, and then I feel like we've missed a month already.
Monthly cross-functional reviews.
Yeah, like the director level type of thing.
Yes, and that it's combined with the product management one that they were already doing monthly. So I put a link to that somewhere in here, and anyone at GitLab's invited. Invited to join if they'd like to. So either or participate, either sync or async. So the monthly one, we did our first combined one between product management and engineering for sec and data science earlier today. So
Okay.
next one will be in approximate month. So if you'd like an invite, so it's on your calendar, just let Hillary know, or add yourself to it. since Hillary will.
I actually think this one was on my calendar, and this is the one you asked for some data.
Yeah,
regarding
that's
the
right. Yep.
Reliability. Gotcha.
Yeah, Thomas covered the error budgets.
Thank you, Thomas, for doing that. I think when I saw that, I stepped back, but I didn't realize there was more scope in there. Cool.
Good. Any other read-only topics we wanted to make not read-only and discuss them?
If not, I'll add 2 more things that came out of the retro conversation earlier today.
Go for it.
Number 1, lack of a feature flag harness within the analyzers is actually slowing development on the analyzers for fear of what they do downstream. So that's an interesting thing that we have feature flags for part of the product, but not everywhere. So it's causing a safety question about how safe is it? How sure do we need to be before releasing changes in certain parts of the product? That was one. Another one that came out is one of our KPIs is open MR review time, which is filterable by group, but it is not filterable by project, or it doesn't differentiate by projects. And so do we have hotspots in certain parts of the organization where certain projects are taking longer for reviews than others? And so there was an ask, is there a way to get more granular? Like where are we spending the most of our times, either in individual groups or in sections? Like are there particular projects that take longer than others? And intuitively, we think we know what that is, but it's not something we've actually broken down to see. So those were the 2 other things that came out of this morning's conversation, both of which I thought were interesting commentary.
What's your guess there as far as like types of features? I'm assuming anything with like design related work is going to be way longer to review.
Well, the intuition is that anything in the Rails platform is going to take longer than any other project we have, just because of sheer size. So the busier a project, the longer I've seen. In my experience, the busier a project is, the longer reviews can take, which is counterintuitive, but that's the behavior that I've seen here, and I've seen in other code bases that have similar busyness associated with them, with hundreds of engineers that are contributing changes in a agile or lean based workflow.
The average review time was what, 10 days? Is that right?
10 days. 10 days was the highest that it peaked at 15.4 within SEC, compared to the organization that's 17. So it's still faster, but still, we're still talking a week and a half to 2.5 weeks to get changes in at its busiest on average.
And I think there was a additional consideration there, not counting like holidays or time off or anything like that. So
Anyway, interesting things. We had people come. So it was nice to have the conversation. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, we're at the end of scheduled meeting time, so why don't we break here? Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
See ya.
thank you.